Good morning, everyone. Councilman Rasmussen here, coming to you with my update from our council meeting last night, August 1st, 2022. It was a long meeting. We ended up being there until after 10 o'clock last night. So most of that, though, was discussion and things in the executive session. The actual council meeting went about normal time. So I'm going to start with some updates, things that were shared from council and staff, and then dig in a little bit to some of the agenda items that we covered. Number one, First Friday is this week. Friday night, obviously, the weather right now says maybe, maybe not. But we've got music down on Main Street. I'll actually be there with our Painted Stave Distilling tent doing the beverages for this month. So if you're available, if the weather is good, come on out, see us at First Friday. They're on 6 to 8 p.m. And great music, lots of people. It's been wonderful the last couple of events. Lots of people have shown up. So hope that everything works out well in the weather, and we see you there this Friday. A couple of updates on things happening in town. One, the town has been, I've mentioned this, that the town is undertaking a master tree plan. The survey part of that plan has been completed to identify the street trees that exist in our community, what they are, and the health of them. That final plan should be being returned to the town pretty soon after the survey. One of the items that came out of this, and a lot of folks know this already, there is a tree that was very popular as a street tree called a Bradford pear. Bradford pears were often planted all over the place. They are an invasive species. They've been identified as such by a number of entities, including the state, and we are looking at an effort to remove the existing Bradford pears that are in our community already. It's probably around 20 or so trees that we want to remove. That involves grinding down the stumps and doing a bunch of work. So there'll be a proposal put forward for the costs associated with that and how it will be done. But that's part of trying to create a more sustainable and more locally diverse tree environment here in our community, which is important because we want as many trees as we can get. So if you have Bradford pears, let the town know if you may be on the removal list for that, and I'm sure there'll be outreach going around to each one of those folks. I think they said that there's maybe around 20 or so in the town that they know of that they want to make sure we get removed. Upcoming on September 10th, the town is going to have its Family Fun Day. This is going to be at the Municipal Park. It's a free event. There's going to be climbing wall and games and all sorts of things like that. You'll be seeing more information come out. There'll be flyers, information on the Facebook page, things like that. But Saturday, September 10th, you can mark that as something if you'd like to go out to the Municipal Park and attend that. One of the things that we've talked about for a couple of years, we've finally gotten moving, is the town has installed what we're calling our Urban Arts Trailer. This is actually a storage container that is used by the Boy Scouts that needed a new home. The town decided to partner with them to put it on a vacant piece of land right behind Town Hall and utilize it or make it available for sort of urban arts and expression. The Boy Scouts are still going to use the trailer for storing their equipment. We've got cameras set up on it, and the town is creating a process by which people can buy a permit, which is $5, and the $5 goes to the Boy Scouts, and then can go out and get creative in a respectful way on the trailer there. I think that'll be kind of fun. I'm sure that my kids will greatly enjoy that, especially if I give them cans of spray paint for it. But so kind of a neat little thing to try and bring a little bit of arts downtown, part of an ongoing conversation about how do we engage and bring more arts to our community as a way for our citizens to be more expressive and participate in that, as well as an opportunity to hopefully bring in more people who are interested in arts. So this is the first of what I hope is a number of different sort of urban art projects that we undertake. Keep an eye out for it. Again, you're going to apply online to get a little like pass for $5 to be able to go out and do some respectful art on the trailer that's going to be there behind Town Hall. Another update that most folks, if you live downtown, you've seen the Veterans Day banners. Every year, council honors veterans in our community. It's a nice way to recognize those folks who've committed to public or national service here in our community. The process is that we nominate people who we would like to participate in that. And then they will be honored at a Veterans Day ceremony that's in November. The plan for that date is November 29th at the Smyrna Opera House. It's usually a great event. Families come out. We get a chance to hear and learn about some of the folks who've served in our community and get to thank them for that service. The council members right now are putting together our nominations, but if you want to participate or want to check that out, stick November 29th, put a hold there in the Opera House. It's typically an evening event around 6 o'clock, though I don't know if the final time has been set just yet. And the last on the update list that I think is important is the downtown parking lot is functional, but not totally done. Most of the paving is done. There are a few light poles that are on back order that we're waiting to come in. So we have not done a formal ribbon cutting or anything like that for the parking lot just yet. But you can park back there. If you get a chance, go check it out. It is a massive improvement over the bumpy, pothole, dirt sort of parking lot that has been existing back there for a long time. This provides more parking for the downtown businesses, so it helps out with economic development. It provides more parking for, especially for the Health and Wellness Center, who has struggled with parking in order to fill more of their available spaces in that building. So we partnered with them to get this done, and lots of great support from our representatives in the State House Center and its Representative Carson to help make this happen without having a large expense from the town side to do it. We will have a ribbon cutting for it when it is fully done, or maybe when we get to a point where we know that we don't have pictures of old poles in the background, and you can look for that. But right now, new parking downtown, go park there. So those are the update items. As far as our agenda from last night, so we had a couple of old business items, things that had been tabled from previous meetings. One, which actually was quite a bit of discussion, was, and these come up every once in a while, there was a request from a community member to put in a pool that would have to encroach into a drainage easement that is on their property. The Hickory Hollow development that was done has honestly been a lot of a problem for years. This is in the 3 or 4 years almost that I've been on council. Every year at least there's something that comes up that has to do with a problem in this area because of when it was done in 2005, when the approvals were done. The town approved a number of easements, or in some cases didn't put in necessary easements to ensure that there was a cohesive and understandable process for people to utilize their property. We've had lots of people come to us asking to put in fences, but the fence would have to encroach into an electric easement. In this case, it's somebody who wants to put in a pool that would need to encroach into a drainage easement. We've already allowed a number of people to put fences in that drainage easement, but that drainage easement backs up to another easement on the other side, which is the Bon Air community, which is a landscaping easement. The problem is that we have telephone poles that run right down the middle of that, and we do not have an electric easement for it. Every time something like this comes up, what it says to me is the value of having truly professional management and professional leadership when it comes to making smart choices about land development. Because this is a problem that was created 17 years ago when, for one reason or another, the decision was made to not do the type of easements that we necessarily needed in the long term for that area. And now we have inconsistency from one property to another about what has been allowed. That isn't to say that this request was super problematic. Our engineers said allowing them to encroach a little bit into the drainage easement would not make a drainage issue. So in the end, we approved their request. But really the discussion from the council's perspective was, why have we ended up in these spots, and how do we prevent this in the future where we have constant problems in certain communities around what easements are in place, what is allowed and isn't allowed in those communities, and how do we make sure that both the town gets what we need, which is the ability to access property lines, to make sure that any utilities and things like that are properly able to be serviced, and in the end that property owners get the best use of their property as well. We've done a lot better job in recent times about how these have been approved, but unfortunately, things that were done 15 or 20 years ago are constant headaches for the town council because consideration wasn't given for one reason or another at that time. So, all is to said, they'll get to build their pool, but in the end, we as a town have to go back and try and fix some of these easement issues, which is messy and should have been done a long time ago. That was one of the old business items. Another one is, so as folks would probably know a little bit about this, the Friends of Duck Creek Regional Library. The town entered into a lease agreement for a piece of property with them to build a new, modern, awesome library downtown. However, when that gets started, and they've now acquired most of their or all of the funding necessary to begin construction on that, a little bit over $17 million. Their hope is to begin construction next spring, that sort of March, April timeframe. But one of the pieces of property is currently the home of our planning and inspections office. And so we need to find a temporary and permanent home for that part of our community. And so we had a conversation about where we would like to see that, what makes sense, sort of trying to give direction to staff to come up with a plan for what do we want to do to move that piece of our town operations. In some cases, there's an idea that we need to centralize everybody into one location that gives community members access to everybody at one point in time. If you're getting the example that's constantly used, if you want a water meter, if you go to the town hall, you have to pay for it. Then you have to go to planning inspections and get the permit for it, and then you have to go over to Town Works and pick up the water meter. Right? It's this convoluted thing where you got to go to 3 different places. That's a bit of a pain. The other side of that is it's really hard to put everybody in one place when we've got old buildings that aren't built for that sort of central location. Ideally, you have your town hall in your downtown and everybody is there, but that would involve a many, many $1 million expansion to our town hall, which obviously results in those costs having to be passed on to people in the community, which, some people don't mind, some people mind. It's a constant sort of debate. So right now, what it means is we need to figure out a solution to try and put our planning and inspections office someplace that makes sense for at least a short term while we develop a longer term plan. In all likelihood, we're going to look at options to try and put planning and inspections with public works, since there's a lot of overlap between those two areas. That may be the short-term solution. It may involve some new construction or temporary housing trailers or something like that at public works. That's the direction the town is going with at the moment, to try and come up with at least a short-term solution that might be good for a couple of years while we figure out the bigger question of how and where should all of our town offices and town services be centralized. So that's coming. On the new business side, we had a conversation about the event process and large gatherings. This has been something that has kind of waffled back and forth in the last few years about who should be responsible for approving events in our parks. At the moment, there is a system by which you can go online and you can submit a registration request and pay the permit fee if you want to, like rent one of our pavilions out at the municipal park for a small party. And that's pretty straightforward. It's approved by the folks in our town and you get added to a calendar there. The question really comes up when large events come, and we consider a large event anything over 100 people. Who and what should the approval process be to make sure that we get what we need? For events like that, there's usually a public safety concern. Where are people going to park? Are there any public safety needs? Are there any possible disturbances like live music, things like that can come in? And so the process has been that those event requests end up with the chief of police, and the police department ultimately reviews and approves them with the counsel of the town staff. That has created a few kind of issues, because there's always a question then of like, well, who really owns that process? And it's gotten messy, and there's sometimes the process has not done exactly what we had hoped it would do. So there's an effort, at least we've directed the town staff to go a little bit deeper and try and figure out what is a really good process, a better process to make sure that it's as simple as possible for members of our community and as reasonably simple as possible for our town staff. We don't want there to be confusion between the staff of who's supposed to be doing what. That slows things down. It creates headaches and problems. And we need a better system to do it. And that's one of the things that we're directing the town staff to be doing some work on, trying to maybe even step back a little bit from what it says in code currently and think, what is the ideal process for being able to make sure that people have access to private events in the town parks. We did that. Next piece, which actually involved a couple of different discussions, there was a recommendation from the town staff to reject and rebid the project for the North Duck Creek Water Tower. This has been a potential project for decades, and we finally have the funding and some of the engineering and pieces in place to move forward on this project. Our engineers, KCI, put together a bid proposal package and put it out there. We got 2 bids on it. Those 2 bids came back with a 0.3% difference in cost, so nearly identical costs on a $5 million project. The problem there is that there were some questions raised by both of the bidders about the ideas, the intent of the bid proposal. In the end, these type of bid proposals are competitive and they can often end in litigation. If one party doesn't feel that they were given full consideration, or that another party was given the benefit of the doubt on something like that because of an interpretation that was made on the bid proposal. In the interest of protecting the town from any of those sort of future litigation or problems, the recommendation was to let's basically reject all of the current bids and go back and make changes to the bid documents to make sure that they are as clear as possible, so that everybody is applying for this project on an equal level playing field, that there's no possible interpretation that for some reason somebody was given a benefit around how something was worded or not. It's going to slow the project down for probably 8 weeks or so as the engineers fix the issues that we've identified with the proposal documents, and then go back out and do the required posting and the rebidding process. So 8 weeks. Obviously, we don't like any delays when things are happening, but 8 weeks more to make sure we get the process right on something that we've been waiting on for 10 years or 15 years probably is worth it to protect the town in the long run. So we made that choice. One thing about basically little code changes that make things simpler, like, instead of having people's names as signers for checks, we have the position as signers for the checks. That way, if somebody leaves, you don't have to go back in and change the code or make changes like that. It just simplifies it when staff members and council members change or positions move around. So that's a little change we did. And then the last one is we agreed to actually purchase another piece of property. So there's a 1.6 acre parcel situated on First Avenue. This is actually, think, behind the Royal Farms. That property has been sitting empty, vacant for a very, very long time. It was identified as a place where the town might create a small park. There are really, over in that area, there are no parks that anyone, kids in that community can access without having to cross Route 13 or go out and around over into the Green Meadows area and all the way to the other side of Green Meadows for Green Meadow Park. So it's a small piece of land, 1.6 acres. Doesn't mean that you can do a lot with it. The town's idea here is that we should look for opportunities to pick up these pieces of property where we can put parks, where we can put amenities for people in our community when they present themselves. And this is one of those opportunities. So it's a $70,000 purchase. There are a number of contingencies and things like that come along with it, but it is another step in trying to identify places and provide amenities for the families in our community that we think are important, that we think the town should be ultimately taking on. Those are the big items from the meeting last night. The one thing that I haven't talked about yet, but there was a first reading for an ordinance to make some updates to our development incentives. This is something I spearheaded a couple of years ago to try and clarify what it is that the town provides to developers or redevelopment opportunities, homeowners who are making significant investments in properties, what the town will do in the way of incentives. We have things like the Downtown Development District that's pretty clear, but the town's process had always been, we'll consider everything on a case-by-case basis, which has created some problems and some feelings that there might be special consideration given to one person or another, and we don't want or need that. So we put together a set of development incentives a couple of years ago with the idea that we would go back and constantly kind of be looking at these to make sure that they were where we needed them to be. The proposed changes to this are a couple of things. One, it clarifies some language where I guess there is some confusion about how development incentives are applied to our IORP, which is our research industrial park areas. One was a change to the fact that we have changed actually some of our zoning names. We no longer have Central Highway and South Highway and North Highway zoning districts. We have a highway commercial zoning district. And so we want to make sure that the language in this portion of the code aligns with the language in our zoning code. And then another is to look at some of the areas in this have what we call minimum ownership requirements, which is that if we're going to waive the fees or some of your permit fees for a project in downtown, we want to know that you're going to hold on to that house for a number of years. You're not just like putting $50,000 in it to flip it or something like that. The problem there is that we may be waiving $300 in fees and then spending $500 to put the lien on that piece of property, and then in the end have to spend even more money if we wanted to try and enforce that lien, which in the end is throwing even more money after something. You're giving a few $100s in a waiver on a permit and then spending 3 times that in order to actually implement it, which doesn't make a lot of sense. For very, very large projects and other things, there are ways to do this that probably make more financial sense. But the interpretation from the town is like you create a ton of work and you really get no benefit out of it except for increased expense if you wanted to try and actually enforce that piece of code. So the proposal eliminates some of those minimum ownership requirements to basically save the town money and make it a little bit easier for the town to actually utilize and enforce those pieces. This is the first reading of that ordinance, meaning it's going to come back 2 more times. There will be more discussion on it, possible changes to it as it works its way through that process. But that was part of the meeting last night as well. There was no discussion on it. It was just the first reading of it. So those are the big items from the council meeting last night. The reminder is, of course, First Friday will be on Main Street, 6 o'clock Friday night. We've got music, we've got drinks. Ideally, we do not have rain. Let's hope we keep it that way. And I hope to see everybody there because I will be there. So, have a wonderful week. Thanks, everybody.